with
I,
you.
I want to let Dr. Tia sign, John, because he wanted to weigh in here.
Well, I was addressing a very earlier statement made as far as this question of marrying down. I was going to say, if you actually look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data in 2020, from the age of 18 to 65, Black men actually earn more than Black women in terms of employed Black men. When you start factoring, when we really look at Black male poverty, a lot of that, unless we're talking about homeless or the unemployed, we're really talking about the impact of incarceration on those numbers. That's what really sets this aside. So Black men earn less than Black women when you factor in incarceration. But when you look at employed Black men, and there's only about 1 million fewer Black men employed than Black women out of 43 million people, that's still a workable number in terms of marital options. Black men actually earn more. So this whole question of marrying down is, I don't really think, a genuine and honest question. I think the issue comes down to what we perceive as a marriageable Black male by many Black women. And unfortunately, a lot of that time that's influenced by media, where this whole thing about how much you earn, how much you own, so on and so forth, becomes the defining standard of what constitutes a marriageable Black male. Even if you earn more, it needs to be a certain amount. So one of the arguments that I hear people making is that you actually have a majority of women across race looking for a very small percentage of men. Now, the other point I wanted to raise about, I don't know his name. I can't see a tag on there.
Themis, and Brother Themis, I think is his name.
Themis. Okay. The other point he made was he pointed to the study on fathers and how inaccurately it was and how it's not being used properly. But prior to that, in this discussion, we were going off just gut opinion. So I'd like to know if you have an alternative study. Question on how we're talking about Black men keeps going back to caricature and stereotype, when the subject is actually supposed to be Black women's ego. So we keep having this same gesture. It's like having a martial arts battle with the person who's doing the same move over and over. And we keep coming back to the same issue and not dealing with the subject. We keep derailing and deflecting and I argue, even when men engage in this, it's part of how we've been socialized. We don't know how to hold women accountable. And this is not limited to Black America. This is actually a larger issue. You know, in this country, that on average, men actually get sentenced 65% more for the same crimes that women commit. We do not know how to hold women accountable beyond just the Black community. This is a larger issue, even though I do think the Black community has a whole different issue, a whole different framework that we need to get into. But I'm saying in a larger context, we don't know how to do it. And I think we're demonstrating that when we try to have these discussions, and it keeps coming back to some kind of dismissal of Black men's statements or an ad hominem attack on who's speaking or Black men overall.
Hold on really quick. To the folks in the chat, to the mods, please stop timing people out. Like, let folks engage, let folks disagree. As long as nobody is being disrespectful, allow folks to position. Stop timing people out. No, it's all good. It's all good. I want to allow Brother Thiem to respond, because he sounded like he wanted to respond.
Yes. So the stats that you just provided regarding who is more employed actually does nothing.
I didn't say more employed.
You did. And who makes more money? Wait, you did. You did both.
No, I said who gets paid more at every age from 18 to 65. Who earns more?
All right, regardless.
No, it's not regardless. If you're going to quote me accurately, please.
All right, then we can go there. You did say who gets employed more. You did. Anyway,
the point of the study is what I focused on. I said there were 1 million more Black women employed.
Exactly. So you did say who employed more. So the study was about income. So you did say it. Exactly. And that does nothing to further your argument regarding marriage. In fact, you wouldn't go there to see who is married. You could go to the research to find out that the more money a Black man makes, actually, statistically, this is not anecdotal, it's empirical. Black men who have more money marry less. So the fact is,
why?
The study don't tell us why. Study, it doesn't tell us why.
But you tell us why.
I can tell you why I think, but there's no study on why. But that's not the issue here. I'm saying it's not the issue. You can believe that. The issue here.
Well, why don't you relate it to the issue and actually answer the question?
Wait, stop. You went on.
Why don't you relate it to Black women's ego?
All right.
Why don't we do that?
Good night, guys. The thing is, I did not interrupt you once when you
Yeah,
were
you actually did interrupt me earlier, but that's okay.
No.
But I'm
So-
trying to actually ask you a question.
All right, let's keep. So the conversation is productive and constructive, and I think the people are learning right now. So I don't want the conversation to end early. So we're gonna try to just use a little bit of etiquette on all sides of the discussion. So, Brother Themis, you can lay out your point. I'll let Professor Tiasan Johnson respond. Brother Emo, appreciate you for self-checking. Let's try to keep passions, confined. So go ahead, Brother Themis.
Yes. Let me preface this by saying ego is the problem here again. And the fact is, it's hard, even for me, coming to the realization that we have been a problem collectively was difficult. The reality is, when it comes to marriage and marrying down, Black women, go to the Pew Research for this, in terms of marriage specifically, are the only race of women that marries down consistently when it comes to financial resources and education. It is a fact. It is an empirical reality. Now, you can say Black men make more money than Black women. That is true. The margin is so small that it is projected that Black women will be the only race of women who makes more than their counterparts, male counterparts, in the next 5 to 10 years, right? That is an empirical reality, a projection, but a reality to come nonetheless. So when we're having the conversation about who marrying down, that is a fact, right? Your second... Go ahead, sorry.
I want to allow you to finish your point because I do want to jump in here.
No, you can jump in. That's fine.
So first of all, the language of marrying down, I think, is highly problematic whenever we're having a conversation between like Black men
Xandric
and Black women.
No, it's not.
I'll allow you to. I promise you, I'll allow you to jump in. Just I'll finish my point here. But I think I'll say first that the language of marrying down is highly problematic when we're talking about Black men and Black women, because the reality is, if we attempt to remove any phenomena related to our community from the context in which we exist and how that context, differentiates in terms of results between Black men and Black women, then we are deluding ourselves, and then we arrive at solutions like divestor-based solutions, like hashtag Black women was leading to earlier, that the solution to solving the problem becomes dating out and or looking to other communities. Now, what I would say is that Black men, because of racism, has suffered the brunt of a societal attack at a much earlier stage than other men have kind of like gone down that same funnel. But when we look across the board right now, and this is not just for Black men, there was an excellent study that was put out, an article, not a study, I'm going to share my screen here. There was an article that the Wall Street Journal put out in 2021 called "A Generation of American Men Give Up on College. I Just Feel Lost." And based on that article, there were several other articles written, "Doomed to Marry Beneath Them." And this is talking about, in white society, more and more the way that the economy and the way that the educational system is structured, women are geared to receive more, I guess, of the economic rewards. Now, it's been that way in the Black community because of racism, white supremacy, and we've already had an entire discussion at the beginning of this conversation about the reasons why Black men are assaulted by policy, assaulted by violence, because ultimately they don't really want us here as a collective, so they train that attack on Black men. So when you talk about how does ego play into the conversation, well, ego gets into it when you use terms like marrying down instead of saying that, oh, Black women are arbitrarily being propped up by a system. You understand what I'm saying? When you
No, I do not. When you say Black women are being propped up, you literally undermine the work that they do.
I'm not. I promise you, I'm not undermining.
What does prop up mean?
I'm arguing that the dynamics within our community as it relates to male-female relationships have been altered since the plantation system. And this is very very well documented. But since the plantation system all the way up to the modern economy, in fact, we had this discussion earlier in the conversation. Can we point to one example of measurable progress that Black women have made that has not been subsidized by the U.S. government?
Yes.
Oh, well, let's point to it.
Let's move it from.
Oh, you said yes. You were going to answer the question.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Mhm.
I'm moving it from postgraduate and undergraduate, and I'm only staying at high school education. The attainment of Black women in high school education far surpasses that of Black men. That is not because the government is propping Black women up. In fact, Black women are in the same neighborhoods as Black boys. So the reality of graduation for Black women
Wait,
is not.
I literally just said the same thing.
No.
We're from the same neighborhoods. How are we being propped up?
Hold on, wait. Allow him to finish, and folks will be allowed to respond. So go ahead, Demas, you can finish.
I mean, it's fine. You guys can respond however you want. It feels like outside of things, the system has done this to me. There's no other answer. When in reality, the reality is very
no.
simple.
The answer, so in terms of other answer, and this is a point that I think many Black men take umbrage with, because in terms of other answer, the answer is organizing for power to prevent the system from being able to do this to you. But we have to acknowledge that we're in a situation that is highly individualized, and there are many that are trying to kind of like marry and get in bed with the system. But that's a different conversation. I want to get back to the high school point, because although I don't reference the Moynihan report quite frequently, I mean, they already dealt with the differences between male and female achievement at the high school level back then. But let's talk about modern research and studies that are being done. There was just a study that came out of Yale that talked about attitudes towards Black male children and how it impacts their development. The study was
Wait, 1 second. Please tell me you read that in full. Please tell me you read that in full.
Because it's talking about interrupting people.
No, I wanted to ask him something.
So it's okay when you do it. That's what you're saying.
Let's talk about let's
just want the clarity.
Hold on. So there was a study that just came out of Yale that was talking about attitudes towards Black male children. And the purpose of the study was they had a group of educators examine children at play and to look for bad behavior. The whole gist of it was that there was no bad behavior occurring. The goal of the researchers was to see who the educators would look to and looking for bad behavior. And across race, across gender, all of the participants look towards the Black male. So when we talk about Black male achievement at the high school, then we have to, at the high school level, we have to get into like the attitudes that persist within our community in terms of the usefulness of Black men, in terms of where our limited financial and political resources go in terms of who are we pushing forward. And I think that historically, we've seen within our community that a lot of that energy is poured into our daughters.
Which Yorugu is doing the research
out of fear, right? And I had Dr. Joy DeGruy on the show. She talked about kind of like maladaptive trauma responses. A big part of it is the fear that if Black men are successful in this system, they'll get lynched. So a lot mothers and sometimes fathers are like, listen, let's hold that boy back, or like dumb him down a little bit so that massa isn't threatened by him, or the system isn't threatened by him, and unwanted outcome befalls that person. So I'll let you respond, Brother Demas.
I did read post-traumatic slave syndrome, and I find it quite interesting, actually. But to your point regarding the studies coming out of Yale, there was a follow-up with Harvard, Stanford, and Cornell, I believe. Sorry, I don't remember the last one. And one of the points that came out was the fact that we've studied the adultification of Black boys, and there was concerns about over prescribing drugs and ADHD. What they found, however, was there were similar rates concerning Black girls, but it was not studied at all. So the Black feminists that were going out, intersectional feminists, that were doing research on Black boys, on Black boys, on Black boys were specifically only caring about black boys until one of the women stood up and say, wait, what about black girls? Is it the same? They found it was. It was the same. They weren't being diagnosed with ADD, actually, but they were being ignored, thought of as aggressive and rough in the similar ways that black boys were from the ages of, I think it was 5 to 12. And then there's a difference later, but they were treated essentially the same way and overlooked in the same way. So when I point out school, I'm not doing that ignoring the realities of oppression for black people in America. I'm saying the system does not elevate black girls in school. In fact, it diminishes them in other ways outside of race, including gender.
What about the disciplinary rates?
They're both, I think the black boys were disciplined at a higher rate for certain kinds of behavior, but I think it was not statistically significant to note.
No, it was actually quite statistically significant. It's almost twice as high as black women who dwarfed white girls, black girls who dwarfed white girls. But for black boys, it was almost twice as much as black girls. What about the special education rates?
Wait, what study are you reading, sir?
I can post you the article here, but my question to you
it's not an article. I'm not reading an article. I'm talking about a
Can you actually let me finish? I'm asking you a question. What about the special education rates?
What about the special education?
Any significant differences?
Boys are likely to be diagnosed. I just said that. And I'm not talking about an article. Wait. I am not. Here's the problem that not with you, sir.
So if it's misandric, then the women are being overlooked.
Brother Emo, let's keep it in order. I wanna.
Dr. T, I will say that I've grown to sort of respect you on the panel. Just FYI, it doesn't matter. But to the extent that we're having this conversation, I fear that we're not like reading the studies and we're doing like article review of certain studies, and I don't know how fruitful that conversation is when I can talk about the methodology and we're just doing summaries. Like, I don't think that's useful.
You're talking about methodology from your Rugus. Come on, dog.
There is.
I want before hashtag Black Women. I'm gonna let you jump back in, but we have another guest on the panel. Is it PP? Is that like Pleasure P? What does PP stand for?